Antoni Joan Neto Berga, Arrabal del Castillo 1745, Villa Carlos 1833. Antoni Joan Neto Berga was born on November 7, 1745, in the village of Arrabal del Castillo de San Felipe to a humble family of laborers. He was the third child in a family of 7 siblings, although effectively the second as the eldest sibling died in 1749. He was baptized on the same day at the parish church of Our Lady of the Rosary, with the rector Père Antoni Ruiz officiating, and Joan Segui and Agueda Neto as godparents. Antoni Joan's childhood and youth were like those of any young person of the time, though he lived during the period of Menorca's greatest prosperity. When he was 11 years old, they had to leave Arrabal because the French invaded Menorca and placed cannons in the homes of the villagers. After the defeat of the British, a quiet period of French rule followed, lasting 7 years during which they had to rebuild their family home. The English returned in 1763, and with them came the demolition of Arrabal and the founding of Georgetown. At this time, Antoni, who was already 27 years old, married a girl from his village named Martina Castells Arnaud, daughter of Francesc and Martina. The wedding took place on July 28, 1772, officiated by Père Antoni Ruiz at the new church of Villa Jordi, also known as Our Lady of the Rosary, in the presence of witnesses Père Carreras and Antoni Alimundo, the latter being a magistrate according to Menorcan institutions and the public notary of the town. 9 months later, on April 11, 1773, their first child, a boy named Antoni Pere, was born. A daughter named Teresa Antonia followed on October 16, 1775, but unfortunately, she died a few days later. Next came a spirited girl named Teresa Maria on January 21, 1778. Just as the war against the Spanish and the French erupted with the American War of Independence, it is likely that Antoni, like many young and not so young Menorcans, joined one of the local corsair ships. Menorcan records indicate that almost every Menorcan was conscripted, with over 1,800 men at a time being armed for corsair expeditions. Nevertheless, there is no reliable evidence that Antoni participated in the adventure that brought prosperity to those who embarked on it, as well as those who worked for them from the harbor. During the prosperous period of the war, Francesc Pere was born on March 14, 1780. When Martina became pregnant again, over 15,000 Spanish soldiers arrived on the island to conquer it. Many Menorcans fled to Gibraltar, while others didn't have the chance. Thus began the Spanish dominion over the island. Coinciding with the Spanish takeover, Martina Magdalena was born on August 2, 1782. Subsequently, Joan Antoni was born on September 21, 1784, followed by Jaume Josep on March 2, 1787. Unfortunately, Jaume Josep died a few days after birth. On October 18, 1789, a new child named Jaume was conceived, preceding the last of the children, a girl named Anna Maria, born on October 19, 1791. In total, the Neto Castells couple had 9 children, with 7 surviving, but it decreased to 6 by 1793 due to the death of 13-year-old Francesc Pere. Many difficulties arose with the return of the island to Spanish rule in 1782. Firstly, the Spanish decided to demolish the San Felipe castle to prevent the British from returning to the island. The castle had been the main economic engine for the inhabitants of Arrabal and later Villa Jordi, including the Neto ancestors. But now it was being demolished with dynamite to erase it forever and destroy Menorca's strategic importance in the Western Mediterranean. At the same time, Villa Jordi changed its name to Villa Carlos in honor of King Carlos III of Spain. However, the most significant changes among the Menorcans were related to religion and culture. Until then, the official language of the Menorcans had been Catalan, and their religion was a mix of Catholicism and Protestantism. Now they had to adapt to the imposition of the Spanish language and the influence of the Holy Inquisition with its superstitions. A multitude of preachers also arrived in Menorca, sponsored by the Crown, trying to make the Menorcans adopt Christianity, which ironically had never been abandoned. Economic freedom, along with Menorca's strategic importance during the 18th century, led to many Menorcans losing these privileges and emigrating to Gibraltar. By the late 1790s, around 62 Menorcans had already emigrated, and by 1791, this number had increased to nearly 200. It was only a matter of time before many others made the same decision, especially considering that the Spanish established mandatory military service for all seamen. Many Menorcans adapted their navigation businesses and began trading grain with Turkey, later selling it to the Spanish Levant, North Africa, and the southern coast of France. The Menorcans always adapted to the changing situations amid so much warfare. It was during the 90s when a new war erupted, this time against the French Revolutionary Republic. This meant a new boost for Menorca as British fleets constantly visited the port of Mao. Things changed again with shifting alliances as France and Spain allied against Great Britain. This presented the long-awaited opportunity for the Red Jackets, who invaded Menorca in 1798 with just over 3,000 soldiers, as there was no fortress on the island. For the inhabitants of Villa Carlos, which now returned to its former name of Villa Jordi, this brought about a significant economic boost. All the people of the town were recruited as masons to rebuild the San Felipe fortress, and the seafaring men became privateers. Whatever the profession chosen by Antoni Neto, both entailed much work and a secure salary. The prosperity disappeared again, with the return of Menorca to the Spanish in 1802 with the Treaty of Amiens, which led to the demolition of the reconstructed castle, the end of privateering, and the emigration of 231 men and 179 women to Gibraltar. To make matters worse, the Church of Menorca, which was supposed to safeguard the Catalan language, now definitively prohibited its use. This was compounded by the disaster of the war, as the 1808 revolution and the wars against Napoleon led to widespread hunger in Menorca due to isolation and the arrival of thousands of refugees fleeing the mainland's war. This triggered a revolt in Villa Carlos, led by the parish priest Jaume Pellegri, which soon spread throughout the island. The governor and the bishop had to escape the island, and for 7 years, Menorca was almost independent. It is worth mentioning that they offered the governance of the island to the English authorities, who rejected it for fear of losing an ally against Napoleon. After the war, it seemed that things would return to normal, and many believed that trade and navigation would resume as usual. However, the reality was far from it. In 1820, the government prohibited the importation of foreign grain to Spain, which killed off Menorca's trade with Turkey. As a result, 1/3 of Menorca's population emigrated to Algeria, recently conquered by the French, where they were given land in exchange for fighting against the Moors. Many others chose different destinations, including the youngest son of Antoni Neto, named Jaume, who left for Gibraltar with his wife and daughters in search of the prosperity that the English once brought to Menorca. Antoni Neto, now very old and with many of his children abroad, fell into abject poverty. He was not the only one, as the Menorcan emigrations began in 1820 and did not stop until 1850. Menorca was never the same as it once was, and to make matters worse, his wife Martina died on May 5, 1830, at the age of 76. According to the death certificate, the church buried her out of amoride, meaning she couldn't even afford her own burial. Antoni Neto Berga died 3 years later, on October 9, 1833, at the age of 88. He was also buried out of amoride, and his body rests in the rural cemetery of the town. Though it has been nearly 2 centuries since Antoni Neto Berga roamed the earth, his story and legacy live on. At Silver Screen Family, we believe that every life, no matter the time of passing, holds a unique and cherished place in history. We are dedicated to capturing the essence of your loved ones, preserving their memories for future generations to embrace. Through the art of filmmaking, we celebrate the lives of those who came before us, ensuring that they are never forgotten. Join us at Silver Screen Family, where we create timeless films that honor the past and inspire the future. Let us tell your family's story so that it may resonate with generations to come. Get in touch with us today, and together we will film your family's stories, preserving their essence and memories forever. Silver Screen Family, forever preserving the memories of your loved ones. Contact us now to begin this extraordinary journey.